Welcome to Comm Majors. I'm Brian Costello.
I'm Jim DeSanto.
I'm Katie DeSanto. And we have a special guest. Brian, introduce our special guest.
Our very special guest is English teacher extraordinaire, Megan Campbell.
Yay!
Welcome, Megan.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
having me on. I'm very excited. I'm a big fan of the podcast.
Thank you.
Whoa.
I don't think anybody's ever said that.
No.
Yeah.
I am taken aback.
Yeah. We have a
You guys
few.
are a nice, safe haven in a Trump crazy world right now.
Oh, thanks. That means so much. That really does.
That is the nicest thing anyone's ever said to Katie, I think, actually, probably. It's the nicest compliment
I'm going
she's
to
ever
put that on my
received.
resume.
Oh, good.
So we are today discussing the Denzel Washington Oscar-nominated film, Fences, which it just so happens, which I didn't even know when we asked Megan to join us, that she teaches this play.
Brian.
So this is like an actual expert.
I
Thank God,
assumed
'cause
that's why you invited the woman on.
Because I have questions.
Jim does have
I will
questions.
do my best.
So this is
I'm so
this
excited.
this is a legitimate podcast for one episode. We actually have a guest who is an expert on
the
something
subject.
that we're doing.
Amazing. And this is
Thank
also
you.
our first Denzel Washington film.
Which is crazy.
Which is crazy.
Yes.
We
Actually, really?
Yeah.
Well, the only Tom Hanks film we've done is Mazes and Monsters.
No, we did League of Their Own.
Look at their own.
Oh, League of Their Own. We did League of Their Own. That's true.
See, I know.
Don't undercut a League of Their Own. I honestly...
Who's
I'm not undercutting it.
I know, but
What
I
just
just don't
happened?
think of it as a
Listen.
Tom Hanks movie.
Right, there. So I think a lot of people don't put that performance up. And honestly,
it's fantastic.
when I really think about it, I think it might be my favorite
I
Tom
love
Hanks
him
performance.
in that movie. I
Jimmy
it's a
Dugan.
crucial
It
role.
is a
It
great-
pivots him from
Absolutely.
comedy to drama.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great movie. Okay, but before we get going, let's talk about what we're drinking this episode. What does everybody have?
I'm having a cocktail in my naughty, it says the naughty one glass.
I'm having a cocktail in the nice one glass.
This is like an old fashioned.
I like it.
It's like a double though.
What am I drinking?
You're drinking the Belvedere.
Oh, a Belvedere. It's extra frosty and delicious tonight. There's like actual frost on the outside of the glass. That's
Could
how
we
much
have-
he
It's a thing.
shook it.
It's a thing.
He
glass,
shook it.
yeah.
We have our Christmas episode in a couple of weeks. Could we have a eggnog infused Belvedere?
Oh God.
No.
Eggnog.
Remember when we had people bob for apples and eggnog?
I do remember. I did not have people do that.
And it
You
was
had
sitting under
people
the
do that.
lights for like 2 hours and it was curdling.
There's no milk going into the Belvedere.
I don't think there was
No.
any milk in that eggnog because it was from like the
Yeah,
Turkey
couldn't get a
Hill.
lactose free eggnog. All right. Megan, what do you have?
Nothing fancy, just some run-of-the-mill Kendall Jackson Pinot Grigio in my remote
now.
hybrid in-person glass.
Okay,
For
the
every
glass
teacher.
is fabulous. Number one. Number two, Kendall Jackson is no like Trader Joe's wine. Like they make a solid white wine. So
They do. I just am actually more of a red wine person, but this is all I had left. So
Sometimes
that
you got to
makes
go
me
with what you got.
sad. That
yeah, you
makes
got to
me
go with
feel
what you have in
Yep.
the fridge. So
Tomorrow's Friday. You better make a stop at the wine and spirit shop. Oh, you don't have those in Massachusetts.
she can just
you
go
just
to
go to the
the
grocery
store.
store or like the 7-Eleven.
You could. You
where,
can go.
Where do you go?
Yeah, to any locale.
You can go anywhere.
a liquor store right down the street.
We can
so.
go to the grocery store
Now we
and
can.
get one.
Pat Morgan's here. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. Okay, before he leaves, because he's only going to stay here for a minute, we have to raise our glass to Pat
Happy
Morgan.
birthday.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Pat
birthday,
Morgan.
Morgan.
No one cares.
Oh, I care. I
sent him
care
a-
about you.
I saw him a picture this morning of a decrepit old man. First thing.
He is
just to
getting
remind
more
him.
and more salt and less pepper every time I see him.
Oh wow.
So that you went right there. didn't you? You went.
I
went
feel
right
like he's
there.
been going great
He's
since
gonna-
college.
he's
It's been
gonna-
a 20-year gradual fade.
Okay, just keep digging.
Yeah.
Just
He has
keep laying
been
it there.
old
That
as
is-
shit for
that is
all the
great.
time I've known him.
you look like a
Yeah.
40-year-old man since you were 21.
He has.
He went from being
Happy
12 to
birthday.
40.
Yes, why?
This is true.
Kind of like Tom Hanks in Big.
All right, Bri, what are you drinking tonight for Pat's
I am
birthday?
drinking Viridian IPA, which is from Banded Brewing Company.
Very nice.
Viridian.
out of Maine. So another delicious Maine beer. All right, it is time for fact check. So last week we talked Mad Max Fury Road. Katie, for those who were listening to the pod, not watching, was drinking out of a blood bag and was curious about blood types. So there are, in fact, 8 very common blood types that exist. We wanted to fact check that. There's A positive, A negative, B positive, B negative, O positive, O negative, AB positive, and AB negative. Type O negative is actually the universal donor. So if you are O negative, you can be a universal donor. And if you are AB negative, you are
Positive.
what they call
AB positive.
no. My research from the Red Cross said AB negative.
Okay.
Maybe you're right. Said they are
fine.
universal recipients.
So what's really important in this fact check, besides all of the science that you just shared with us, which is wonderful science, is that Keenan was right.
Yeah.
This might be the first time in a conversation Keenan brought the science.
But he was a universal donor.
No, I know, but he said that there are also because I said I had the A, and he said, "Is that the universal recipient?"
Yeah.
And I said, "I don't know. I know there's a universal donor. I don't know if there's a universal recipient."
Yeah.
Keenan was right. Good job, Keenan.
Go Keenan. Great job.
We'll cut that.
We'll edit that out.
Actually, that right out.
Can you just change it to Tim? Say Tim said it, and then people will believe it's true. If we say Keenan, it's fake news. Just an update for people. There are tons of new movies not in theaters because people are just not going to theaters or they are closed again. But keep your eyes out. All of these new movies, many of which are potential Oscar-nominated films, if that actually happens this year, are coming out on Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO Max, all of these amazing streaming sites.
What's the movie that you're very excited about coming out in the next few weeks?
Wonder Woman?
Oh, I thought it was Dune. I thought Dune was coming
Dune's
out.
not coming out till ever.
Oh, no.
It will be Dune.
Yeah,
Well,
got
today
pushed
it
back.
was announced it will actually come out in 21 and it will premiere on HBO Max.
Warner Brothers is releasing their whole
I thought there
slate
was
of
another one we
movies.
talked about. I'm confused.
Well, there are some exciting ones. One that is not exciting and do not watch is Hillbilly Elegy, which
I heard that's hot trash.
was awful.
Yeah, that's a shame. It had good people in it.
It made the Five Bloods look like Citizen Kane.
The book is difficult. I can see how the book would be a difficult story to bring to the screen.
Yeah, the book also has been like trashed more recently for being just like not at all appropriate.
Yeah, it's hard. That's hard. That's a hard sell. The story's a hard sell. So
you will not be seeing that.
No
film
Oscars
in
for that one, huh?
majors. No.
no comm majors either. And sometimes we watch the worst film of the year. So
well, some people like Glenn Close too. I thought was okay, but the rest of
I
it
do like Glenn Close.
pretty bad.
Yeah.
Sad news: Hugh Keys Byrne, who played Morton Joe in last week's movie, passed away yesterday.
Yeah.
So
Cheers
rest in
to
peace.
Immortal Joe. We thought he was immortal.
Yeah. He
wasn't.
also played the antagonist in the first Mad Max
Yes, he
movie,
did.
You know,
named Toe Cutter,
Yes.
which I love. I love.
Rewatched that recently.
The
I
names.
have actually the original.
No.
Yeah. It's much different.
Yeah.
And then finally, I will be appearing, and maybe Jim, if we can work it into his schedule,
very busy.
on the No Limits, a Mitch Trapp podcast. We have been invited to be on another podcast.
You're going to be on the Mitch Rapp Experience.
I have not read any of the books.
Okay.
I still am not sure who the character, who the author, who the other author is.
Yes.
I'm going to do this.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
We might be just having me go on this program.
They will not appreciate my sense of.
There are some very serious, as you can imagine, people who would listen to a podcast tied to one fictional character.
know
I'm
if
not
Jim
sure
should be
rolling
on
in there not knowing or read a book, because they'll probably ask you, like, what's your favorite Mitch Rapp novel?
Yeah.
The one with the guns.
And you're going to be like, what the
latest
fuck's
one.
Trap?
The ones that the 13-year-old boys love because it's got guns.
Lots of guns. Okay, but I am excited to be
I'm
on the
kidding,
Hey,
Brian. I will not be mean to your
Brian,
friends.
Spread the Comm Majors message
That's
all over the world.
We should probably
With our blessing.
solidify that message and amongst
We'll
ourselves, and we'll figure
decide
out what
the
it is.
message We'll
Yes.
decide what the message is.
Okay, time for the rundown. Here we go.
Oh. The rundown. Troy is a 53-year-old man with a checkered past, trying to be a good husband and father. He gives his all to his family, or so he thinks. His two grown sons would tell it differently. His wife probably would too. Now he has a baby on the way with another woman, and it may just tear at the seams of this already shaky family situation. That's it. It's a pretty simple story when you think about it.
Yeah, there's not.
This is one of the more simple stories that we've covered.
Yes.
It resides in the details.
It resides in the details.
Ooh, that is, and that's the episode.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I think we're just going to turn it over to Megan, and we will fade to black.
And we will go away.
Take it away.
Well,
All right. So, first of all, I have to say this. I am not aware of a film that we've done that has received the number of Oscar nominations that this has, that I had no clue was even released. Didn't know it was in the theater when it came out. Didn't remember much of it. Loved Denzel Washington. Not going to say anything bad about the performances, because the performances I thought were great. But spoiler, Megan and I saw each other today and kind of hit on this idea. Is this, and we could discuss this throughout the episode, something best left to the stage?
my initial reaction to this was that if you're going to like make a film out of this, use the cinematic art form to elevate it in some way. Like, I was shocked. Even we watched it in pieces. We watched it over the course of 3 nights because of craziness, but we watched basically the first half the first night, and I was shocked that they start off this movie diving right into these two characters nonstop talking for basically a half hour, from the truck to the backyard, and it just goes on. They do not use like the opportunity of making a movie to set this at all. And so, like, I don't understand why they don't show you just, and I don't even think you need to add dialogue. You don't need to add anything to the script other than like a flyover of like what the F was going on in Pittsburgh at that time. Like, where do these people live? What's the circumstance? And just show us. You don't need people talking. The only thing I can think of is, honestly, if Spike Lee directed this, there would have been like a long pan shot down the street watching just people live. I don't know. I think Denzel, the director, was the weak link in this.
Well,
I think we should let Megan talk.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you are the only person who knows the scripted version of this play. So I would love to hear your thoughts on the comparison between, reading it, if you've seen it performed on stage versus, the film experience. And just know that, like, they can be very intimidating, but anything that you say, I'm going to back you up.
What?
I appreciate that.
Because I'm right. I'm in it.
Yeah.
Katie enjoyed this.
I ran into Brian in the hall earlier today, and we were just sort of exchanging our like preliminary thoughts. And it's the movie script very, very closely follows, almost verbatim, the play. there are very few alterations that you would find. So as a teacher, the film is very helpful as a visual medium for the kids. But I do agree that something does not translate. The conventions for the theater are it doesn't always fly when you try to keep something that is designed for a theater experience, which is in many ways a little bit more intimate, and you need more explicit dialogue and more explicit like soliloquies, that type of thing, to transfer that to the filmic medium, which is different. So other than a few shots, like they have a shot where they cut to with Denzel Washington waiting, or is Troy waiting outside of the mayor or whoever, the official's office.
Right.
That actually felt like a movie when they did that scene. You're so right. That felt like a scene out of like LA Confidential or something.
Yeah.
It looked, felt.
It needed more of that. It needed, I think, some more. Not that you need to manipulate and add dialogue, but it needed to work, I think, more along with the conventions of film. In terms of framing shots and stuff, and incorporating. Like I think you made a good point, Jim, about opening up and just establishing the context with different types of shots. But as I said, I mean, it's a very accurate depiction of the play. Very accurate.
So, nope, my turn. So I think you can't. So Jim and I were arguing last night over whether you consider this a movie or whether you consider this a film version of a play. Because to me, the context of it being a play is vital, right? Like you have to understand that about what you're watching. And then when I dug into the history of this performance and saw that, the original cast was James Earl Jones and Courtney Vance, and then the revival cast was Denzel and Viola, I thought, this is a way to cement that in history, right? Because I can't imagine what it was to see them in these roles on stage night after night, right? Like two of the most incredible actors of all time in this. I think it's a beautiful play. That feels like a once in a lifetime experience that only a small percentage of the population is going to be able to be a part of. And so to put that in film form, that feels really special. And I hear what you're saying about making those shifts to it being a cinematic experience. But I think that there's a reason to not do that too. Because I think that staying true to the playwright's depiction, right? So like what the playwright envisions is what's able to be shown on a stage.
Then show it on a goddamn stage. Hamilton did it this year.
Agreed. That's my point. And Comedy
and that's how you cement that's how you cement the
experience,
the theater performance. This is a movie, and Megan basically said exactly what I was feeling. Is like, while the theater is a very intimate experience because the stakes for the actor, right? There's no second takes. There's nothing. It is less intimate in the way in how close you can be to them.
Yes.
Right. And so the stage does force dialogue that you don't need to force when the camera's, a foot away from a person's face. Right. You can, on the stage, there's so much of speaking of their own emotions, right? Saying what they feel. And instead of like just showing an actor's face portraying that. Like you wouldn't film.
I don't disagree.
Right. And so like we had the same problem with Fury Road. Like if you're going to take the steps towards being something deeper, then you take all the steps and do it. If you are going to make a movie, make a movie. Like and maybe they tried. Like honestly, maybe it was just not
Right, because they did do, so Megan referenced the scene at the commissioner's office or whatever. We do have scenes where you travel around the house, you see what other characters are doing, or you're out on the street, you're following the trash truck, which clearly, yes, I mean, those things wouldn't be they wouldn't be seen on the stage.
Other characters are just standing around watching other characters talk to each other. It has a very stage feel like that, where like, yes. So I'm just gonna go wash dishes for 20 minutes while other people talk, or like I'm gonna eat my ham sandwich. Like to me, I really enjoyed this. Like there was so much to talk about, but this specific point, I don't know that it for me held up as like a really great film.
Okay, no, I think that's fair, and I'll be honest, I don't think, because this was my first experience with Fences, I haven't read it, I haven't seen it on stage. I was watching this like a fan of literature, like taking in the play for the first time. And so I think it was hard for me to separate that from looking at it as a movie.
But our initial immediate reactions were like almost polar opposite. Because you said, well, that's like, it's so human. It's so like, and I was like, no, these people are like abstract versions of like, they're, and I guess that is also human to some extent. And maybe but they are like very, very facade characters. Like,
so what Jim's talking about, that I'd love your perspective on, Megan, is we were discussing just Troy, the character of Troy, and my exact words were that construct is very human. The complexity of him, the experience that the audience has to him, of like, there were moments where Jim was like, well, what is he talking about? Like, what he's saying is like absolutely false. And yes, right. Like at some point you're supposed to pick up on like he's full of shit, right? Like right. Like nothing that you can't take anything that he says like at face value. And so I think the interaction between the audience and Troy, shifts throughout the film. And to me, that does feel very human in terms of how we interact with each other.
So unfortunately, I missed a little bit of that because my internet connection, froze up. Oh. But I think I got the gist. And if I missed something, please fill me in. I mean, like, Troy is a tough, like when I teach this, the kids have a really tough time with his character because he is very dimensional. There are parts where you really root for him and you feel for him, but yet at other points, he's also so dislikable. And so, just awful to his wife and to his kids. I don't know if this is the part that I missed, but I think that artificial quality that you are talking about might be, again, due to the fact of, in a theater, you don't get the benefit of having a camera like close up to like zero in on your face. So the expressions and the way that the dialogue would be written would be a little bit more exaggerated or over the top in terms of, because it has to provide the exposition and the context for that character. So that might be a little bit of where that feeling of, I don't know, that I guess contrived feeling might be coming from. But it's done, I think, in the spirit of it being designed for a theater performance and in capturing the fact that this is a very layered and dimensional and conflicted character.
Yeah. I totally agree with that.
So our favorite director, Tess Malone, who should have directed this and said it should have never been a movie, only a play. To me, the biggest crime with this movie is there is nothing cinematic about it.
Yeah.
And that bothers me.
Well,
and I think there's some understanding, and this is my point. It reminded me a little bit of a discussion we had with Just Mercy, even though this isn't a biopic, but you have Denzel Washington, who played this role, obviously, in the revival. And you had the playwright write the screenplay. And I'm wondering if the materials, obviously, it's Pulitzer winning, it's Tony Award winning, it's so special on the stage, and there were obviously, it was such an attachment to them. Were they not able to take the steps that somebody who was not as close to that material might have been able to say, listen, this works on a stage, like Jim was saying, this crazy long monologue at the beginning where you're having all this, it works on the stage. Movies can be visual. Like, you could tell this story. Some of the stuff that you're saying in words, you could show us. And I felt like that wasn't being done as much because they're so closely married to it. And I felt like with Just Mercy, it was the same thing. Like, you had Michael B. Jordan, who, I mean, how can you not love the guy he's playing? Yeah. You know, how can you not love, and you're so closely married to that, and you want to stay to that overrides this idea that you're making a movie. And it would have been more interesting to me, like Jim said, if they had done something experimental, like have it on stage. You know, like the set, there's not that many settings. Well, they don't show us what Pittsburgh is. They could have almost have done this on a stage like setting. And to me, I think that would have absorbed me into that world, because I do think one of the problems is this: when you're in a theater, that is a wholly unique experience. That you are willing, like part of you is willing to accept things and experience things in different ways than if you're sitting at home and watching. Yeah, because if you were watching it in the theater, maybe you're more closely aligned to that. But it felt cold to me. This movie. In
a theater experience, you're seeing something that only the other however many people that bought tickets that night are seeing, right? Like tomorrow it's going to be different. And the day before it was slightly different, right? I would like to know, one of the things I want to ask Megan is about the title, Fences, and the themes of like all the fences and gates that are mentioned throughout this movie.
Yeah.
Have you seen the show?
I haven't seen the show. I've seen clips of it with both James Earl Jones and, which by the way, if you go to YouTube and you compare James Earl Jones, his Troy, against Denzel Washington's, they're both excellent, but very, very different. Yeah. In terms of how they perform. But I've seen clips, but I haven't seen it live.
Yeah, like I was just wondering, like they don't do a very good job in the visual medium of showing you the fence.
Yeah. So
I was very confused about when the fence got built, when it was like even after he's working on it, you sort of don't understand. My initial like expectation was that he was going to fence in the entire yard, and then like that never happens.
So our question was, in the script, in the play, you know, is there stage direction after Raynell is born? Particularly, there you go. Particularly in those, you know, the clips where you see him kind of like out in the cold, you know, building the fence while Rose is inside watching him, and you see the distance between them. You know, do we get the information that he ever finishes the fence? Like, is it ever finished before he dies, or is it forever a work in progress?
I'm checking the stage directions. I'm inclined to think that it is built, but you've flummoxed me.
No worries. It's just interesting.
I mean, they don't show it in the movie.
Well, they show it. They do show at the end. You see it by the tree,
but you only see a portion.
It's not in the back alley.
It's ongoing because they both, you know, he puts off the work and procrastinates.
And it sort of just like cemented with me. One of the things that I struggle with, and I would love to hear Megan's perspective of like when you teach this, like sort of what is the big culmination of like the theme and things that the students are taking away from it at the end, because to me it is very gray on like how it portrays Troy in the end, and that's specifically from dialogue. But I would have loved to have seen, is it Corey and Lyons like deciding to finish the fence or something like what I mean, you get the whole like the gate opens when Gabe plays the trumpet. You see that the gate. I don't know if you noticed, Brian, but the gate is like opening.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you do get the one cinematic moment, which is they look to the sky and see an angel in the clouds,
Yes.
which is an awful. That was terrible. To like use that as like as the moment you can do.
That's going to be the one moment.
That's the one thing you decide to do and you can do in film that is going to be tough in the theater.
Well, and we wanted to check that too. Like how is that described at the end of the script, right? Like what's the final image that you're left with?
Yeah, because me and Katie stayed up late like chatting about this last night.
Yeah, so at the very end, so you're talking about the scene where he blows the horn, Gabriel?
Yes.
Yeah.
He blows the horn, and then so this part isn't as evident. This is where our stage direction is actually kind of important, and I'll like read to you what it says. But it says, Gabriel, with great fanfare, braces himself to blow. The trumpet is without a mouthpiece. He puts the end of it into his mouth and blows with great force, like a man who has been waiting some 20-odd years for his single moment. No sound comes out of the trumpet. He braces himself and blows again with the same result. A third time he blows. There is a weight of impossible description that falls away and leaves him bare and exposed to a frightful realization. It is a trauma that a sane and normal mind would be unable to withstand. He begins to dance. So this part's interesting because it's not as obvious. Mm-hmm. A slow, strange dance, eerie and life-giving. A dance of atavistic signature and ritual. Lyons attempts to embrace him. Gabriel pushes Lyons away. He begins to howl in what is an attempt at song, or perhaps a song turning back into itself in an attempt at speech. He finishes his dance, and the gates of heaven stand open as wide as God's closet. That's the way that go. Black out. So there's much more of an emphasis on Gabriel's dancing at the end. And I think it's always interesting that it's described as atavistic, almost something primitive. So
And but then how do they show that on stage? Like I would love to see what that.
But also he never makes a sound with the trumpet in that in what you just read, and in the movie he does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the score like fades in to fill it more, but yeah, that's very interesting because that's very much more like, to me that's like almost as full of shit as Troy is for the rest of the movie. And that makes way more sense to me. A little bit.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there's all this different,
Gabe is your purest character.
Right, but even he couldn't make the noise, and then it goes black, and he says that, or right before it goes black, he says that's how that goes. In the movie, there is a sound. The gates of heaven do open, and like, I don't know. To me, I would love. Yeah, we'll have to see if we can find that.
I mean, so I don't think that really drastically changes the way you interpret the ending of that story, because he wills it into being. Like whether it's with his dance or
to me,
with
though.
his...
The choice based upon the rest of the movie feels slightly odd to me. Just the way they shot it. I think it's just maybe it's that it was so much of this is on them, and it just seems like it turns into almost like a Hallmark channel.
Absolutely, I thought the last scene was too much.
Is weird.
Right, like you could have conveyed again what the playwright wants to convey without it being so heavy-handed at the end.
And people have really struggled with the end of this play and that particular scene. The kids generally don't know what to make of it. Even like people that I work with have different competing opinions about what his dancing means, and there's different criticism out there about how he's adopted this Gabriel persona that's very Christian and something that's been conferred onto him by, white Christians, if you sort of bring the historical context in. And then the dance being described as atavistic is returning to like pre-Christian roots. If you bring like, the sort of idea of African culture into it. And this is him really getting back to roots and pure, but it's very nebulous.
Yeah.
What draws you guys to do this? Like, why? Like, is Fences something you guys do as a piece of literature? I'm just like interesting, like from a thematic kind of view. What's a driving factor behind Fences?
So I think there's a couple things. First and foremost, it is a play about Black American experience by a Black American author. So getting different stories and storytellers into the curriculum and sharing sort of diverse experiences of what it means to be an American, because it's in an American literature course, is sort of number one on the docket. I would say another reason is it's a great companion piece to Death of a Salesman. If you've ever seen that play.
I did think that.
That's
actually,
my
that was
favorite
interesting.
play.
I didn't even think about that, but absolutely.
It is definitely a companion piece. A lot of similarities, but now you've got the racial lens involved, and it's an excellent example of Miller's definition of the modern tragic hero, somebody who believes that they have a rightful place in the world, a vision for themselves, and a dignity that they are after to achieve. But they're so locked into that vision that they alienate everyone else around them.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to watch this and not think of Death of a Salesman. You know, like it feels very much in relationship to. This play does not surprise me as being a Pulitzer Prize winning play. And again, I think that's why I forgave a lot of the cinematic choices, was that this was my first experience with the play. I think I was so focused on the words, the writing, of August Wilson that and the performances. I mean, seeing Denzel and Viola Davis in those roles. I mean,
I think Viola and what's his name and Corey were amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Denzel is tough for me because
it's hard to forget he's Denzel.
Like he doesn't. He is an incredible actor, and he is so bigger than life. But when we talk about movie stars, like he's a fucking movie star, and he does not disappear into this role.
It's funny. I was really thinking about William H. Macy and Shameless while I was watching this, because I think of both of them as very classical actors. Like they can really harness that very proper, powerful actor, Yeah. And then you watch William H. Macy in Shameless and you forget all of that, right? Like
Fargo.
You forget everything else that William H. Macy has done, and he is Frank, right? He's Frank Gallagher, and you forget who else he is. I couldn't shake that this was Denzel. Right. Especially in the beginning few scenes. But on the trash truck, I was like, it's Denzel.
But on
Denzel
stage,
is on a trash truck.
But I can see how on stage
it would feel different.
It would feel very different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He's a big star, and it's a big character with a lot of bravado. It's a very bombastic performance.
Yeah. But you're right, that perspective of the stage totally shifts it, right?
Because you're not
when you're up in his face, and it's the lighting and the make, right? It's just different when you're back in the audience, right?
Yeah.
And just seeing everybody up on stage.
It is an incredible, the dialogue
is amazing.
It's amazing. It's Aaron Sorkin worthy. Of course, dialogue here.
And you know what? When I was that's great that you bring it up, because when I was watching it, I did wonder if you so let's think Aaron Sorkin, Few Good Men, which was also a stage play. Yeah. Very heavy dialogue piece, much like this. But you got Rob Reiner, who was a very skilled director. And I love, Jim, your point of if you gave this material to Spike Lee,
what happens to it?
What happens to it? Because I do think what Rob Reiner was able to do with Sorkin's work, or other directors, good directors with Sorkin work, David Fincher, when we did The Social Network, is they figure out ways to incorporate motion and visual aspects that allow that dialogue not to stand out as the only thing that is happening in that sequence. And that's part of the problem with this. You become so fixated on the performances, which are fantastic, but everything else is secondary. There's almost like it is staged. There's no depth. You're not using all the things you could use in the medium to enhance this. I want Fincher or Rob Reiner did with Sorkin's work.
Right. You want someone who's in love with film to make this.
You want Ryan Coogler to make this. What about Ryan Coogler?
100%. Not someone who's obsessed with the show Fences, which is completely fine. Like, I completely get it. But the moment you decide to make a film, like, make the film.
Well, and
like,
and here's where I would disagree. I disagree with the stance that this should never have been a movie.
Me too.
I disagree with that.
Yeah.
I am glad that this is a movie because so many people will now get to see
100%. I want to see the show now. Like,
absolutely. I want to read more of August Wilson, right?
Yeah. Them doing the show. I guess that's my only critique.
But the hard piece with that, Brian, is that you don't draw as big of an audience.
Yeah.
As soon as it, right? Like, as soon as it, Hamilton's different because the buzz over Hamilton is unlike any other stage production that has ever been, right? And so,
except Cats.
Except for Cats.
It's the longest running show.
Folks were going to see that no matter what. You know, there was a hunger for it. Yes, nobody had heard of Fences, right? Like, people outside of the theater community or who weren't following the Pulitzers, like, people didn't know Fences. And so they went to see it because it's Denzel and Viola Davis in a movie.
Yeah.
Not because, the play from Broadway has been filmed, right?
And to be fair, it's not. I don't want to stress this. I don't think Denzel did a bad job directing it. I just think it's kind of pedestrian, and I don't mean that to be insulting. It's just like
on the film side, on the cinematic side.
Yes, not on his performances.
On the direction.
It's almost like what we talked about. It's the opposite of last week. Last week on the cinematic side, like visuals, like all the technical pieces of filmmaking, George Miller did it. And when it came to the dialogue and some of he didn't. There was a shortcoming there. This week is like the opposite. Like the performances, the delivery, all of that's amazing. It just needed, I think, someone else to be able to. It felt like a stage directed film.
Well, and I think what you're saying is true, and it depends on how you look at it, because I think the fact that August Wilson was involved with the screenwriting of the film and that Denzel went from, being Troy on Broadway to acting in the film and directing the film, obviously their perspective is going to be keep it as close to the stage production as possible while making it into a cinematic experience. And so I think, you can argue like whether that's for the best or not, because in one regard, it is just shifted off of the stage, right? Where it's like I think
we haven't seen it.
I think they mostly try to keep it as it was written.
And I know Megan has already said that, like the dialogue and everything is pretty much exactly the same. But when you shift it off the stage, like, I would love to see this, because I do have questions about things like that were just not shown well.
Yeah.
And whether they would have shown them on the stage.
I think the experience for the viewer would be that we would see it on the stage and say, wow, that's so much better on stage.
Right.
That's so much better on stage.
And that's why you don't do.
But we wouldn't know to go see it on stage, except for that we've seen the movie.
Right. But I've sort of made the decision to like judge this as a movie.
Yeah,
right?
I hear you.
And as far as like performances, dialogue, the script, they were all incredible. Like, honestly, there are moments of this that felt very much like The Wire to me in certain regards, because they do have like this rapport with each other that is specifically with Troy and Bono, that reminded me of like, oh, these two have been partners,
Stringer and
right, or Jimmy and Bunk. Like, it just felt like their relationship was sort of lived in, but also sort of like, and this is totally purposeful and is very present in the text, like there's like a fakeness to their relationship that is very interesting to me. And so like I would ask Megan, like, you know, we've been talking about this for a while now. What are the things about the text specifically that you like to teach that we haven't like brought up? Like what are like the key points and moments that we haven't talked about?
I definitely teach Rose's speech to Troy and looking at her role, what she's had to sacrifice and her, you know, how her gender informs, you know, intersects with her race and how that's represented within the play. So we spent some time talking about her character, the Bono and Troy dynamic and looking at how that evolves throughout the course of the play is something that we talk about. We talk about the generational disconnect between fathers and sons and looking at the fact that, you know, talking about Troy and his relationship with his father, which he talks about in one of his speeches, and then his relationship with his two kids and looking at that in conjunction with like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that on the one hand, Troy is an improvement from his father, and yet still such a disappointment to his kids in many ways. So this generational trauma that's been sort of, you know, conferred upon the sons in the family.
Yeah.
We talked about the interest of who he is to his children and that develops over 30 some years. Right. And so like who he was to Lyons versus Corey versus Raynell and how they're all going to remember him
because they're all like
differently.
snapshots.
Right. Because they all got this point in Troy's life that was so wildly different, you know, and so it's interesting for Jim and I because we have the experience of like having parents who've had kids over a long period of time. And so we see this. Well, I mean, your family, like, I mean, even your family has a gap, you know. I very much connected with the Raynell character, you know, in meeting her brother Corey for the first time because my brother Kurt was in the military, you know, right after I was born. And so that idea of like, wow, like, you know, I was 3 years old meeting this like adult sibling, you know, and we both have this story of who our parent is. And it's wildly different because there's 20 years between, right? Like 20 years of growth in a human it's a whole generation, right?
I have that in my family too. So
I think that's fascinating in this story, you know.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that the last child is a girl. That, you know, Raynell is female.
And she's going to be raised by Rose.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said.
And she's going to be raised by Rose, not Troy.
Exactly.
Right.
And so when we talked about the end of this play, and that's, I agree, they did a disservice with the cheesy Hallmark movie version at the ending. Yes. The end of this play is remarkable in that you realize this larger than life protagonist, right? Like the whole message at the end is like, now that he's done taking up space in their lives, look at what's going to grow, right? Like they are all going to be better, closer, stronger humans in his absence than they were with him.
One thing I said to Katie is like, you don't get any real human moment in this film where we're like, two people are reacting on a level that is both vulnerable until Troy's gone. Until Troy's gone, and you have Corey and Lyons, and Lyons like says like, "How are you? How are you? Are you okay?" Like that moment felt so like breaking the glass for me of like, oh, the rest of the movie just kind of like fell in place behind it, and it was like that was all bullshit. This is a real moment between two
it was
people.
like a tender, like a physically tender moment.
Right. And so like Troy's almost like the antagonist of this movie and we follow him. And then like when he's finally gone, you have all these survivors kind of trying to process like what they take away from his involvement in their life. Yes, I agree with you that that's the point. Katie brought this up last night. I wish there was like, for me, the whole lead up to that moment, we don't, at least in the movie, I didn't feel like we got a moment where we thought I didn't see anything Troy did for anybody else in this film that was good, other than provide money and let's just say money, because he ends up giving Lyons the money, but not in a roundabout way through Rose. But like, he talks about like putting food on the table. We find out that he's not the reason there's a roof over their heads. So like, I just wanted something to balance the scale of Troy and make him feel like even if the rest of the characters don't see something good in him, and they end up seeing that, which is crazy to me, let the audience at least see something redeeming about Troy, because I did not feel it.
So I do think there's moments.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, when?
But no,
so
but
let's
hold
talk
on.
about that.
This is my question to Megan from teaching it, because
Yeah.
I'm interested if it's some of the performance choices that Denzel makes as opposed to the text of the play. Because to me, this is where the James Earl Jones in the role versus the Denzel might change things. Denzel is amazing, but he never necessarily plays characters that
I kept thinking of Training Day.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yes.
There's not that element where, and this like oddly popped into my head when I was watching this, because I was like, I know I'm supposed to be feeling sympathy here for him, but Denzel, the movie star, rarely plays a character where you have to feel this level of sympathy for, where you have this, where he has like a vulnerability in that type of way. And I know I should feel that, but that's where Denzel, and I thought back all the way back to when we did Groundhog Day, oddly, and Tom Hanks was one of the people who was going to be cast instead of Bill Murray, but he's like, I can't be that dick. Bill Murray can be a dick and he can be lovable. Like, and that's what I was kind of thinking. Like, you needed a character where the sympathy was almost, I felt it because I knew who that person was, because there's not a lot of sympathetic moments in the way Denzel portrays it. And I kept finding myself feeling like I just don't like Denzel, and his performance is great, but I don't know at the end piece if these people should feel like, oh man, he's taught me so much, you know, like that moment at the end, he's out of our life now. Because what we're seeing a lot of times is the bad sides of him.
Yeah.
So I almost need that sense of like a James Earl Jones. I feel like I could feel that. Like if I'm seeing James Earl Jones, it's James Earl Jones, the voice, I can imagine all of it.
He's
There's
Darth
that
Vader.
Level of sympathy.
Greatest
for it.
father in the galaxy.
All right,
Yeah.
Megan Campbell.
So how do kids feel, Megan, when they read this? I mean, is it different? Is it different how you teach the interpretation of him? Is this Denzel's reading of this character, or is it the character on the page?
The kids have a tough time, especially with the speech that Troy gives about like, I don't have to like you. That wasn't part of the bargain. They struggle with that, but I think it's important to always look for the context. And yes, an awful lot of Troy, how he treats the people in his life, can be pretty despicable. But when you walk it back and you look at how he grew up, the fact that he was abused mercilessly by his father, the fact that he was basically out on his own at 14 years old, the fact that his father is probably his life, if not touched directly by slavery, you know, like there's generational trauma from you know, that period too, from being in the South, that I think you have to appreciate the fact that this is a guy who has survived, who can put one foot in front of the other and persist. And I do think that is something he passes on to his kids. Does it excuse the awful way that he treats his family at times. No, but I think it makes it understandable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think there are two scenes where you do see the vulnerability, and I agree, Brian. I think there is a little bit of Denzel that maybe prevents you from getting that full empathetic feeling,
because his charisma and everything. You're like, I can't feel sorry for this guy.
100%.
He's the fucking king.
So that's where you have to you have to think about what he's saying, right?
Yeah.
And so when he tells Rose in that conversation where he talks about what happened with Gabe and how he ended up with it, right? And that he has worked. So I feel like you also compare this to A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry, where we also have, a strong African-American male trying to advance his family, and he fucks it all up, right? Like throws the money away, right? In comparison, this guy has just been working his tail off his whole life, and there's nothing to suggest otherwise.
Yeah.
Right? He has been doing the right thing in regards to being with his wife and son, working his job every day, bringing the paycheck home, and his frustration that in doing that, he could not get a roof over their heads, right? Like that moment, that's the vulnerability, right?
And I think also, just to piggyback on what you're saying, he is a guy that has been, constrained by so many factors and has, a gifted baseball player, but was too old. He missed his opportunity.
But that's not what he thinks.
Well, yeah, because I think his other gift, though, is being a storyteller. Yeah. If you listen to the way that he speaks with Bono, he holds court in his house. And, what is more validating to being a human than having your story listened to and recognized? And he doesn't have that, even in his own family, per se. Again, doesn't excuse how he treats them. But the opportunities were not present. And the fact that he is working and trying to do the right thing, and it's still not enough. But yet, one of the tragedies of his character, I think, also is that he doesn't recognize that times are changing. And this really informs his relationship with his kids. Certainly it's the 50s, so we're still quite a few years away from the civil rights movement of the 60s, but things are changing.
Yes,
slowly.
they're moving. At that point, they're moving in a direction.
Right. And it's different than the period that he grew up in, but he doesn't want to admit that, because to admit that would be to, I think, look at just how little agency he actually does possess.
I will say this. I thought Viola Davis, who won the Oscar, is the one who I think transitioned her role the best from stage
100% agree.
Like that, her scenes to me felt less stagey.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's
quieter
how she delivered.
performance.
It was. To me, she's the most intriguing character in the movie. And I don't know that's how it's meant in the play, but every time when she has her monologue with him about what she had given, to me, quintessentially, and it's probably not the whole point, but to me, that's the most interesting point of this whole movie. The father-son dynamic, all that type of that, what she says there to me is Oscar. I mean, it's amazing.
Yes, and
about
also
it is amazing.
in just the writing of that character, right?
Yes.
That your eye is drawn to him through the entire play, and what you realize in the end is that it's going to be her influence that really tells the tale of who this family is, right? They are who they are because of her, not because of Troy.
Yeah.
You could argue they're who they are in spite of him in some ways.
Absolutely.
I mean, it really is a good movie. I mean, it's Oscar nominated. The performances are Oscar worthy. Yeah. It did make me, like everybody said here, kind of have the desire to see the stage play, though, because I feel like it would be ramped up tenfold, to be able to have seen those performances on the stage as opposed to on cinema.
And I think it's one of those movies that you stop and you you think about it, right? Like
Yeah.
like it's not a film where you're like, wow, that was fun. That was fun, and I'm glad I watched that. This sits with you, right? Where you're thinking about these characters and what does it all mean? Like what is the relationship between them? Where's it going to go from here? And that's really good storytelling.
Well, you can certainly watch this as a movie where you watch scenes out of context
Yeah.
and just pull it out and look at it and talk about what is the dialogue, what does this say about people. And there's not every movie that does that. So it's impressive in that. Again, Oscar nominated, all those wonderful things.
You should
so
watch
definitely
this.
worth watching.
You should watch
it's
this.
definitely worth
Yeah.
watching without question.
You're not
didn't
going to be able to
appreciate-
see it performed on stage
No.
anytime in the next year. So you may as well watch the
I
movie.
didn't appreciate Troy's bashing of Jackie Robinson.
Yeah, no, Jackie is a good guy.
I mean,
Well, I
but
thought that showed he was how
delusional he was.
resentful and
Absolutely bitter.
But like, and that's the thing. Like, if you do watch the Jackie, what is it, 41?
42.
42. The idea of like Jackie Robinson's baseball skill was like 10th on the list that made him a great human.
No, it's what he had to get. Yeah.
Right,
I mean,
right,
once you even
yeah.
his baseball skill is not what got him through that situation.
Right.
All right, make sure you watch that.
Watch this
and by
movie.
the way,
Yeah, watch the movie.
One of his other plays, I can't Ma Rainey's Blue Bottom or Bottom. I have to check. Is one of the movies that's coming out on Netflix this month, and it's Chadwick Boseman's final performance.
Oh, no way.
And it's one of the in the run. It's supposed to be in the running for one of the Oscars.
Ma Rainey's
And it's-
Black Bottom.
Yeah, it's supposed to be really good. So if you loved, watch Fences and then watch that. All right, time
Awesome.
for Game of the Week. Here we go. All right, here we go. Game of the Week. This week we're playing Keep Two, Cut Two, and I picked 4 former co-stars of Denzel Washington. Which actors' films would you want to keep? Which actors' films would you want to cut? All right, so he's
Oh,
been
that's
in
different
films
than what
with,
I thought.
yeah, not the film they're in with him, because that would be kind of easy because some of these movies are not very good. But here are the films. Stars. How about Gene Hackman? Of course, he was in the amazing submarine film. Who knows the answer?
Hoosiers.
Crimson Tide.
Crimson Tide.
Crimson
Crimson
Tide.
Tide.
Hoosiers.
Hoosiers. Yes, Hoosiers.
Not a submarine sandwich.
Submarine film. Playing basketball on a submarine made it so difficult. Meryl Streep. He was in Manchurian Candidate, the update. Watch the original. No,
Oh, I forgot about that one.
don't watch the Denzel version. Tom Hanks, of course, Philadelphia. And then, of course, he was in Julia Roberts' The Pelican Brief. All right. So which of these 4 actors would you keep? You get to keep 2. You have to cut 2. Gene Hackman, Meryl Streep, Tom Hanks, Julia Roberts. Katie, go.
Oh, no. Megan gets to go first, and then I will go second.
Okay.
All right, definitely first off is Julia Roberts. Goodbye. The other 3 are tough, but I think I'd have to send Gene Hackman packing.
All right.
Yeah, keeping Tom, keeping Meryl.
Have you watched My Best Friend's Wedding recently, Megan? Oh, we
I
lost
knew
her
that was
audio.
going to be a shit show.
I think she only lost her audio for a second. It might be for the best.
Apparently, it's not a rewatchable
Oh,
film.
it
Not
is
in 2020.
It hasn't aged well.
No.
My Best Friend's Wedding.
Me too. So I agree. I love all 4 of these folks, but Meryl and Tom are my forever friends. They have
Yeah.
to stay.
Okay.
Yeah, when you said keep the movies of them, meaning like the way I took this originally was just like, which 2 of these do you like better than the other 2?
Okay.
Is a
But we
different
can play it that
question
way.
than like I never get to watch the movies of these 2 people again.
Ooh, okay.
And so like if I was going to only take 2 people and only have their movies going forward, it's definitely Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
It's not even a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing I will say is that like Gene Hackman, Tom Hanks becomes a more interesting question as far as like, capability and like not even that, but like Gene Hackman has some really incredible roles. So like,
Yeah, absolutely.
but I will say Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will take Gene Hackman.
All right.
From Mississippi Burning,
Superman.
I've never
Hoosiers.
seen that. I've never seen that.
You've never seen Mississippi Burning?
put it on the list.
On Prime.
I
I'm
haven't.
gonna go get wine.
You haven't. Well, Megan, can come on to watch Mississippi Burning
Yeah,
with us
I
next
haven't
year.
seen it.
There we go. All right, we'll make a note of that.
No, I have to.
Hoosiers, French Connection.
Yeah.
I mean, so I have to. The conversation.
The conversation was great. Hoosiers. Hoosiers is an all-time movie.
It's people what people don't realize about Hoosiers is people always think it's a sports movie.
It's not.
And solely put it into the category of a sports movie.
It's a
and I
coaching
feel
movie.
like that diminishes kind of what it is. And then I'll pick Meryl Streep. I love Tom Hanks, but I don't think any list you can almost never knock Meryl Streep off any list.
One of her movies that I want to rewatch that I absolutely loved the first time I saw it, and I haven't seen it since, is Adaptation.
Oh,
Very good.
I
good.
love the scene where she is high and she's on the phone with the guy, and they're trying to figure out the two notes that they need to hum to each other to make the dial tone.
yes.
I adore that woman.
Yeah, I
good.
know you adore her. We're having a
right.
conversation, so you should put your headphones back on.
So you actually know what's going on here. All right, it's time
More
for 5
wine has
questions.
been poured.
Here we go. 5 questions time.
Because
You want
visual
answers?
teaching 2020.
I want the truth. What makes a man, Mr. Lebowski?
What the fuck is the internet? Would you? Why?
All right, here we
First
go.
question: can you name all the movies that
questions.
those questions came from in the bed?
Ooh, yeah. Do you know any of the movies in the bed? The soundtrack bed?
So it was only when you first started talking about this that I learned that that's called a bed. Like that.
These are
happened
the
a few weeks
because
ago.
you're not a fucking comm major.
I was not. That was
You're
not
an
one of
English
the
major.
terms I learned in my major. I did not learn.
You did not learn
I
those.
didn't
All right,
learn
time
about
for-
the bed.
Time for 5 questions with Megan. First question, thumbs up or thumbs down? There was a lot of gin consumed in this film.
Oh, yeah.
Are you thumbs up or thumbs down on gin?
Thumbs up.
Excellent. You know who used to drink a lot of gin? Jim DeSanto. You were
I
in that
do still
gin
like gin.
phase. You were in a
Hendrix?
huge gin phase.
Can I
there.
tell you a delicious gin drink that Jim's sister introduced me to? It's a gin and jam. It's a little bit of jam, strawberry, whatever you've got in the fridge. You mash that up, little gin, and then some sort of a sparkling. She was using an elderflower soda
that
from
does sound
Trader.
good.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
delicious. Put a little
right.
sprig of something in there, a little
A
green
sprig?
something.
And if
Always
you
put a
my
sprig.
gosh.
if you are ever in London, get a gin and tonic.
Oh, Jim, we
Americans
can't go
are not allowed
anywhere
in other
right now.
countries.
Stop
We
it!
are
Everybody's
banned.
got jam,
Jam
and soda and gin. That's what we can do.
A Hendrix,
That's about
a
all we
Hendrix.
can get right now. And that might be limited soon. You might not even be able to pull that off.
We could still get bourbon.
Do it while you
we
can.
make the bourbon.
Well, that is fair. We do
We'll
make the
make
bourbon.
bathtub gin if we have
There
to.
is always
Bring it
beer
back
in
to the
Maine.
1920s.
The
As I
fish
show on this show each week. Every week I tell you another place in Maine to get beer.
Now,
so you can
now
go to
Maine is off limits, Brian. We're not allowed
Well,
to go
Maine is off
anywhere.
limits
They're
for me. I
Canada.
can't actually
Can't
go there either.
anywhere.
All right, here we go. Question 2. Would you rather, Megan, watch a movie or watch a play?
So I was thinking about this one. I love plays. I love the whole experience of going to the theater, but I sometimes get sleepy. When I'm just going to put it out there. Sometimes I get sleepy when I'm in the theater, and I'm embarrassed to admit that
No,
as an
that's
English
fair.
major.
That's fair.
So, I'm
They
going to
go
have
so
to go
late.
movie.
They run so late at night.
Well, what if we were to say
and the
that?
seats aren't
they
comfortable?
are so
and-
comfy.
What if
I
we were to
know.
say you had to watch the movie in a movie theater?
Ooh.
Does that
then I would probably go play.
Yeah,
I would
that's-
probably.
That was good. That's well done.
yeah? Thanks.
All right,
Yeah.
I love it. Well done. Dynamite dropping, Jim. All right, fill in the blank question here. Megan, what's something that you would sell your soul to the devil for?
Thinking about this one too. Probably at this moment, for people in this country to treat each other civilly. respect facts and information.
Oh,
I think that's
God.
temporarily. Yeah. That's what I would want.
ideas.
right now.
Wild ideas.
If you do get that offer, we will try to rescue your soul. But thank
Yeah.
you.
We'll go through the 7. We'll go through the 7 rings for you. Yeah, we'll come and
I
get you.
greatly appreciate that.
Okay,
Thank
what's
you.
the Robin Williams?
What dreams may come?
Yeah, we'll go there.
dreams
Oh,
may
you
come?
had to bring that up. Now we're going to
Yes.
be crying.
Let's do it.
Oh, such a good
go there.
one. Such a good one. All right. Question 4, our favorite question. Megan, who's your favorite playwright?
I love drama, but I think I gotta go traditional here and say Shakespeare because I think he's the father of a lot of the plays that we enjoy today. So keeping it standard here.
Keep it with
Favorite
the bard.
Shakespeare? What's your favorite Shakespeare?
Ooh. I think I have moods for Shakespeare. Right now I enjoy Othello because I think it's very topical. And I enjoy teaching Othello.
Okay.
Comedies, I love Much Ado About Nothing. I love Twelfth Night.
So good.
Yeah, love As You Like It.
Wonderful. All right. Finally, our deep thoughts question. What's a movie you would love to see turned into a Broadway show? Occasionally they do this. They take a movie, instead of turning it from a show into a movie, they turn a movie into a show. So what would you like? What movie do you love that you'd love to see as a show?
All right, we'll see if you guys are with me. I think Edward Scissorhands would be a really good musical.
That is an awesome one.
I'm surprised it hasn't been done yet, honestly.
Yeah.
It's going to be like all 90s emo music?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So good.
Yeah, and it's just so exaggerated that I think it would work really well in a theater
Yes.
as well.
Yes, it's
Yes.
correct. I mean, of course,
It's
the
the
correct
modern
answer
Sweeney
was
No. Brian.
Emil Ardolino's
Oh,
Chances
Brian.
Are.
I
But,
mean, it is
Edward
exaggerated. It is heightened reality.
It would be.
so that
It would be
works.
good. Megan, thank you for joining us. We now know that we can watch.
Campbell.
We can watch Mississippi Burning in 2000.
Yes.
No.
People haven't
Here's the
seen
deal.
it.
Here's the deal. We make this deal with everybody who comes on as a guest. We pick the first movie. They get to pick the second.
True.
So
Yeah, but
Megan,
she could come on a third time.
That's
Well,
true.
she's gonna.
That's 100% true.
Mississippi Burning.
But
I'm happy to come on anytime you guys
but if
want.
you would rather talk about something other than Mississippi Burning,
Like the Parallax. View.
I love to ask guests to pick like their favorite movie to talk about or to get other people to watch.
Which I have to bring us back because we have not held up our bargain on this one.
Yeah.
Tess Malone
Tess.
is coming back for
Taxi
Taxi Driver.
Driver,
So
yes.
Brian put it on the schedule.
It's already there.
Oh, okay, great. She's in.
Yeah.
So let's make
It's
that
already
happen.
there, don't worry.
All right, so Megan, think about what film.
Yeah.
What
Yes.
film
I
you
will.
get to
I will. I'll
choose.
put
You
some thought
choose.
in. Thank you guys for having me.
No
I
problem.
normally
Yeah.
cut out it a couple times, so if you were talking and I was like frozen,
No, that
I
You
know
did
where
great.
it's
It
not
happens
where
with
it's-
Brian all the time. It was fine.
Yeah.
Well, I just pretend I don't hear
That-
what you're saying most
that-
of the time, and
He
just
gets
go with
Massachusetts
it.
Massachusetts
and then
internet.
We just have to wait.
We'll get you guys hooked up to the rest of the network sometime.
lots of
Sometime
dead
in
zones in
2025.
Eastern Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So
Again, like, share, subscribe, review, all of those wonderful things. Check me out on the Mitch Rapp podcast. We will not be bringing
Woo-hoo!
Jim, and certainly won't be bringing Katie.
It's rude.
She doesn't know who Vince Flynn, Kyle
You're
Mills, or Mitch Rapp
One of
are.
them's
as
the
we've-
author.
I actually do know by now.
Is Mitch
Jim
the
knows
author?
Mitch is the character.
Oh,
that. Mitch is the guy.
Vince
Well,
is
you
the
were-
original author,
Yes,
and
thank you.
Kyle
So
is
it's
the.
like Carol Keen and
Padawan.
Nancy Drew, and then
I'm
like
so-
folks-
Would it be wrong to call Kyle the Padawan?
Yeah, I am so glad you guys watched that interview I did with Kyle Mills. You clearly watched it, absorbed everything that we
I
discussed
couldn't.
in it.
all
I
in.
couldn't.
It's
took
still
it all
available.
in.
It's just be clear, it's still
We're gonna
available.
watch it
Send it to me.
tonight,
Send
Brian.
it to
We're
me.
gonna
Still
end
watch it.
this, and we're
Available.
gonna go
It's
watch
still
it tonight.
available to watch.
We'll make the dog watch it.
Yes, next week, Aaron Powers is going to rejoin us, which means Katie will probably be blacked out during the episode. And we are going to talk about the amazing Schitt's Creek.
I'm rewatching the whole series in preparation.
We are as well. We finished it and immediately started
Brian,
rewatching
I am
it.
so glad that you end. I honestly, I didn't know what to do if you ended up not liking it. I was so torn on what happens if this is not a pleasurable experience for Brian Costello. We might not be able to be friends anymore.
No. Well,
I just started Schitt's
that
Creek.
would be the breaking point.
Oh,
Man, I'm so excited for you.
yeah.
Well, you can watch it and then join us next week.
Oh my gosh.
And tell us what you think.
Oh, love every minute of it.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
It's
Oh,
amazing.
it's good. I like it so far.
Are you
so.
in? You're
only
just
gets
season one.
better.
Are you in season
I
one?
like am literally one
Oh
episode.
my gosh, you don't even
I am
know.
right
You
at the
don't even
beginning.
know what's
Right
coming.
at the beginning. I literally just watched it the other day when I was homesick.
Yes.
Now you have to binge.
Yes.
You got to binge.
Go watch episode 2 right now.
Right now. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you again.